Good evening. Today has been a pretty interesting day, so I thought I'm going to check in with you. And thank you again for everyone who likes my videos and who subscribes. That makes me happy. Then, it gives me a little bit of feedback that people are interested in this, what I'm sharing here. Today, like I said, this was an interesting day. Three things: Kaliningrad, Gepards, and what was the third thing? Well, the oil, that was the other thing. Not oil, gas. The gas bomb deal, Poland and Bulgaria. And maybe number four, Lavrov sharing with us about the threat of nuclear war. But let's start first of all with Kaliningrad, Königsberg. As I've shared in my other video, I tend to read local newspapers, during times of crisis or events. And the new Kaliningrad newspaper, it's called the New Kaliningrad, just the New Kaliningrad is the name of the newspaper, announced today that the governor's election for Kaliningrad Oblast, or Ostpreußen, in September of this year is going to be postponed. And of all people, tomorrow morning on April 27th, good old Vladimir Putin himself will address the state legislature in Kaliningrad, encouraging them to enact a law not to have any governor's election this year. I don't know anytime in the future or which way they want to go with this. This is kind of ironic. I'm not on the ballot. Neither is anyone else of the House of Hohenzollern on the ballot. But I guess he found it necessary that he himself had to go over there to address we will see that tomorrow. So we will have another video on that thing tomorrow, because that kind of came out of the blue. They had been talking about this, that that there's a possibility with the ongoing special military operations in the Ukraine that the Kaliningrad Oblast may gonna postpone their governor's election this year. And today, sure enough, with all the events, NATO and everything else what came into the picture, they sure went for it. So if the West is interested in a regime change, tomorrow morning, there would be a good time, because that's when you're going to be flying somewhere, trying to get from Russia over to Königsberg. And there's a lot of things which can happen in these, there's very limited airspace available. That's all I'm going to say to this. Now, on the other hand, the next thing is Gepard. And that was good news. I'm pretty delighted about this. I have to say that the people, whoever made those decisions and picked those particular heavy artillery type, flak systems, they did made a good decision. For one is they're available from the manufacturer, they're overhauled, and they have been upgraded with equipment. They can carry now, besides the 35 millimeter rounds, a lot of different ammunitions can be launched from there, and enhanced radar and this and the other thing. This will come in very handy. The great advantage of the Gepard, which means cheetah, is the 35 millimeter rounds, standard rounds, which they can use, and they can use then, of course, armor-piercing 35 millimeter rounds. And interestingly enough, Romania has these Gepards, the surplus stock from the Deutsche Bundeswehr, and the Bulgarians actually make the ammunition for them. So there's plenty of capabilities close by in terms of parts, repairs. This vehicle has been around for a long time. It is very, very high quality stuff. and it was introduced in the early 70s for exactly this kind of scenario, what the Ukrainians are facing right now. And of course, the primary thing is the, anti-aircraft, anti-helicopter missions which they would do in terms of transports or tank battalion type movements, tank warfare in the field to protect everything. And they will take the Russian helicopters out very quickly and very swiftly. And of course, other airplanes. And with armor piercing, you can just point a cannon straight up front. You got two of them, and you can just do a single shot and then penetrate a tank or other armored vehicle if it comes to this. They're highly versatile. They require only 3 people to operate. And, the training is probably fairly simple. The Ukrainian army seems to be quite capable of adapting very quickly to new technologies. This is what I've gathered by watching them, getting trained on new equipment, and what the feedback has been from American defense contractors who have been over there. So that's a good development, and it will supplement the whole scenario, the whole theater over there, not just on the battlefield up front, but also then the as a protection against air assaults on regular, redeployment and resupply convoys and that sort of stuff. They will be able to provide an excellent anti-aircraft shield there, anti-helicopter shield. So that's basically it. Now, one more thing to Kaliningrad is, from what I also read in that new Kaliningrad paper, is that the Russian Federation has has been moving, resources back there. At this point, they're pretty much landlocked, and they're sea-locked and landlocked. The Navy can't get out. The Russian Navy can't get out very easily because you got all these NATO boats or ships now in the Baltic Sea, for one. They are encircled literally between the 3 Baltic states and Poland, and of course you have 150,000, 200,000 men there, plus the entire air support from both sides in this. So even though they have nuclear short-range capabilities there, and some battalions, helicopter battalions they have there, it's mostly Navy-related stuff, Navy battalions and Navy infantry groups, but they're pretty much locked at this point. So I don't think he can't really move them in or out because of the controlled airspaces now around there. So I'm not quite sure on how he can actually, or how they can move these assets out of there. At this point, this is pretty much frozen, what he got in there, Putin he got in there, or the Russian Federation, the Russian High Command. So with that being said, now the other thing today was the announcement of Gazprom shutting down the gas supplies tomorrow, or by the time you're watching it today, of the gas to Poland and to Bulgaria. That didn't come quite as a surprise. We will see what the pipeline closures on how the Russians are going to do this is going to, affect the whole thing, if the Germans still going to be able to get gas through this pipeline or not. And otherwise, like I said, it doesn't come as a surprise. So that's kind of the 3 things which happened today in a nutshell. The United Nations has made a move forward, in terms of peace talks and corridors. Now, I have to say one thing, as to clarify this: the Western news media always says they cannot escape. This is not quite correct. It's because the Russians allow them to escape, but they can escape only to Russia, into the Russian-controlled territory. They won't be able to escape out of there towards Kiev. That's the real point. So they can. I watched an interview on one channel where a Ukrainian family had left via Russia, then flown to Turkey, and then from Turkey they went actually to Poland because the rest of the family had been able to get there before it got to the point where it is now. So the direction is not from that they cannot get out; they have to get out via Russia. So that's kind of the nuances in this, you know. So if you don't want to go to Russia because you don't know what's going to happen, that lady with her husband and their son, they, I guess, were fortunate that they were able, but that was like 2 weeks ago, they were able to get into Russia, and the Russians let them travel, I think via Moscow. It went from Moscow to Istanbul or to Ankara, and they took then a flight from Ankara to Istanbul to Warsaw. And so that's kind of on how these things play out. I guess the people who don't have the financial resources, they would be stuck then somewhere in Russia, wherever they're going to bring these refugees then. That I would guess so. From what I've gathered is they have some refugee camps in Moscow, and that's where they're being brought to if they decide to, seek refuge in Russia, even though they don't want to be necessarily there, but the option is there. So that's why the Russians really don't stop shelling this that way, because, because these corridors are set up in that particular manner. If it is Russian-controlled area, you have to go to Russia. If it is still open, you probably can make the escape and trying to get to Kiev, and then from Kiev to Lviv or down to the Slovak border down there, Romanian border in that territory. The developments in Transnistria are somewhat too early to comment. We will see. I will have an update on those. And now Lavrov's comments today about the possibility again of a nuclear war. He seemed to be pretty adamant about it. The Americans here are not utterly concerned about it. We have a wide variety here in the armed forces arsenal to deal with nuclear weaponry and nuclear ABC attacks. To intercept them no matter what it is. So we are not worried about, being attacked here in the United States or in other parts of Europe. That is fairly somewhat out of the question at this point, because the other thing was, like I said, there's MAD involved in it. The mutually assured destruction, if this would come to this point, is that there would be a counter launch from the other side, in this case here from our side, into Russia, which would then cause an X amount of casualties and destruction and radiation and all of the stuff that comes with it. So the likelihood of this going to that extent is relatively small, if non-extinct. Otherwise, if that would have been a serious threat and it would be a single-sided advantage, the NATO countries, the visits today from the American Foreign Minister and the Secretary of Defense would have not happened. And I was happy to see this, that they went to Ramstein and that 40 other nations joined them there to discuss this. That is a positive sign. It is also a sign of confidence that we are not as far gone in this with a nuclear ABC type scenario at this point, unless Washington has completely miscalculated this. I somewhat doubt this, and I don't think that Germany necessarily would have been really in favor for it, of doing something like this if that was a imminent threat to begin with. Yeah, so this is kind of what sums everything up in a nutshell, and I think the developments are good. I hope that the Ukrainian army will get these Gepards pretty quickly, and that the Bulgarians can crank up the ammunition supply, because they go through 1,100 rounds per minute, for, I think, between both cannons, 550 per cannon, and they shoot simultaneously. You will need an awful lot of ammunition, 35 millimeter or whatever else you can carry in there. So they hopefully they're not going to underestimate this, because when you pull the trigger on this, it will lay out a carpet in the air, and that's a lot of ammunition. 10 million bullets, 100 million bullets, rounds, something like this. Probably the bare minimum they will need if they're deployed. 100 of these vehicles. 300 men plus, reserve crews and that sort of stuff. You're looking probably at 500 to 1,000, so you're basically building up a whole battalion of those. They're going to deploy them probably in various parts of the Ukraine, and they will do what they needed to do, what they were designed for. Excellent piece of equipment, that I can guarantee you. And again, if you like my videos, please like them. And if you subscribe, that would make me happy. I have not forgotten about the Order of the Black Eagle yet. I'm still working on that. You can expect it. I was very busy today and yesterday, and there was always something coming up. And I wanted to prepare this to and I've been thinking about how I'm going to present this, so it doesn't sound like it's going overboard with this stuff. But I want to present it in a way that it is interesting to the viewer, because in essence it's pretty bone dry stuff, what you deal with. That's a general with the orders. There's, like I said, there's a lot of not mysticism, but misconceptions to a certain extent in there, and mystical, because people really don't understand it. And this is not like, the Bilderberg group or something like this, where people meet in deep and utter secret, and they plan out the world events and world affairs is all nailed down between 5, 10, 15 people, and then from there everything is controlled. That even a monarchy doesn't work like this, only in an absolute monarchy, but by about 1850 or 1880, almost all of the European monarchies were constitutional monarchies in one way, form, shape, or another, and had parliaments, and governing bodies involved in this whole thing. It was the predecessor for democracy. Democracy was in the real thing, what we got today, but those were like the steps going into this direction, and that changed. Well, we will get that going hopefully sometimes this week. I'm looking forward to it. And otherwise, we pray for peace. We hope that everything is going to be all right. And we will see on how this is going to further develop. And with that, you have a great evening.